So hello, my name is Nicole Smith. I am the Event and Communications Coordinator for Spark Niagara. Welcome to our weekly webinar. We're excited to have you here with us today. Just wanted to also say thank you and acknowledge our partners, which is the South Niagara Chamber of Commerce, as well as the Niagara Falls Small Business Enterprise Center. We partner together to be able to provide these webinars to all of our entrepreneurs in the Niagara community. So we're so happy to have you with us today. So today we have Hope and Kayleen, who are going to be speaking to us about market research and competitive analysis. Now, during their presentation, we ask that you hold off on your questions. However, you can put them in the chat box if you'd like, and so we would encourage you to do that. And at the end, there will be an opportunity for Q&A. So without further ado, ladies, I will hand it over to you.
Amazing. So thank you everyone for joining us. Today we're going to talk about market research and competitive analysis and some tips and tricks for when you're doing that with your startup. So my name's Kayleen, like Nicole mentioned. I just graduated from Brock this spring, and I'm starting my master's in the fall. I'm a project coordinator at Spark, so if you're a Spark member company, I'd love to chat with you. And I am also the co-founder of Civic Connect, which is a youth-led nonprofit. We do a lot of work in the areas of youth unemployment and lack of youth civic engagement and addressing barriers to those, as well as providing some fee-for-service consulting services to small businesses and charities in the areas of digital marketing, brand strategy, corporate social responsibility, youth recruitment, and all that stuff. So yeah, we're really excited to chat with you about this today, and I'll hand it over to Hope to introduce herself.
Hi, my name is Hope Tufberg, as previously mentioned. I'm the other half. I'm the other co-founder to Civic Connect, also a project coordinator at Spark Niagara, and I'm going into my 4th year of my undergraduate degree at Brock University. We're super excited to have you here today.
Amazing. So most of what we're going to talk about is our experience with market research, as well as some best practices for market research. And we kind of got thrown into market research head first this past spring when we competed in WE's Next Top Social Entrepreneur Pitch Competition. So that was across North America, and we actually won that competition. So that was really exciting. So we've been doing a lot of learning as we go about this. So yeah, this is just a little quote about the purpose of market research. I really like it.
I'd like to kick off in what is market research. Market research is a very critical process of not only starting your first idea and therefore your startup, but something we recommend you do continuously throughout the growth of your business. It's a process of gathering information about other companies in your sector with similar products and services, possible competitors and collaborators. You'll also want to take a look into gaps in the market, trends in consumer behavior and purchasing patterns, dive a bit deeper into how and why consumers buy similar products, how competitors market themselves, and importantly, you want to focus in on the target audience and demographics for your product or services. So in the bottom line of all this is that market research also clarifies the problem that your product or service sells and how you can address it better than your competitors. We recommend doing market research before launching your business, after the launch, and then when you launch a new product or service, and also if you go through a rebranding process or updating your market strategy. We really stress that this should be an ongoing process as your business grows and evolves through the changing job market to continue reminding your clients, your stakeholders, and general audience of why your business is still very much needed in this climate. Primary market research involves the first-hand research into the market and your consumers. This can be done with surveys, focus groups, and interviews. The two that most entrepreneurs typically use are exploratory research and specific research. This involves just overarching research into the general trends and problems in connecting with consumers and identifying what's important in your market. Specific research narrows in on a specific segment of consumers, a specific problem or strategy, and involves exploring the ways you solve specific problems. Secondary research is incredibly important to make sure It's very important to make sure that your sources are credible, finding good data, and making sure that they are closely relevant to this date and that it is information you'd be proud to show from a credible source. You typically draw this research from public sources such as consensus and government data, public reports. This could also involve commercial reports from your market or different research agencies, so they typically do cost money to access. And you can go further to look for data from within your own company, such as exploring the ways in which you get revenue, your customer retention, and your website and social media analytics.
So this is the kind of $1,000,000 question of why should your startup actually do market research? Because a lot of founders view this as kind of an optional thing or put it off and we'll do it later. It's actually really important because it drives everything, every aspect of your business operations and business development. So most importantly, it answers the question of why your business is different, which shapes your competitive advantage, which we'll get into a little bit later, as well as the value proposition that you present to others. It's used to secure funding, shapes your branding and brand strategy, directs long-term business development and strategic planning, as well as is used for applications for incubators and accelerators. So it's really important to know why you're doing what you're doing instead of just going ahead and doing it. And a lot of times we are kind of pretty siloed and we think we have a great idea or we think someone else has a great idea, but really backing that up with the data to make sure that there is that need in the market and that the market will be responsive to your idea and your startup is super important.
So looking into the process of how do you do market research, it's a great place to start is in defining your buyer persona, and then moving forward to identify a portion of that persona that you want to engage with. Our example at Civic Connect is we wanted to engage with youth, and instead of putting a blanket umbrella on the perhaps grade 7 to 30-year-old cohort, we focused in on maybe providing different programs for high school students versus post-secondary students and then young professionals. Once you have this figured out, you'll look further into engaging with your market research participants, preparing your research questions that'll help you go forward with that primary research we discussed earlier. And after that, you'll move forward to list your competitors and summarize the findings from this whole process of figuring out why your business is very needed, who your customers are, and what makes you competitive. The typical buyer persona has a variety of different components to it, from age, gender, location, income, what kind of occupation they work in, what their family status might be, their challenges and interests. While many businesses might look at a few of these key traits of a buyer persona, we really recommend looking at all of them because that will really help you guide your marketing strategy and create a product that is very, very needed for that audience.
Okay, so once you've come up with the ideal buyer or persona for who your business is targeting to serve, you need to actually materialize that as someone to talk to or interact with to get their opinion and see if they would buy your product or service. So the primary market research can be done in person or over the phone. Focus groups are probably the most common now, especially in COVID, which is online surveys. So what you're going to do is you're going to be looking towards people that fit a lot of the requirements in your buyer persona or target audience, and then choose some real people that fit that criteria to engage with. So generally the smallest you could go for a sample size is 10 people. And then a good way to start is people that have recently interacted with you or your business, and make sure that there's a mix of participants so they're not all saying the same thing. And then if we go to the next slide, you actually engage with them. So this can be a little bit overwhelming at first if you're not familiar with doing research, but it's pretty straightforward. You can just pull from lists of current or past customers, could find active customers who didn't carry through with a purchase, like lost carts. You can recruit on social media, just do a paid ad to fill out your survey. Access your wider networks if you're in a university or in an incubator or co-working space, and then create some kind of small incentive. So a common incentive is like you'll be entered into a draw for a gift card or something like that. And then you just are going to have a conversation to gauge their opinion about a few specific things. So it's always a good idea to prepare a discussion guide if you're going to have an in-person discussion, or a survey if you're doing it that way, with open-ended questions to foster discussion and allow them to voice their views. So the first step is to get their background information, demographics, histories, awareness, when they realized they had a need or problem. So when they realized that they needed this product or service, or that kind of product or service. Consideration, who they reached out to. Did they use Google? Did they use word of mouth? How they looked into what company they were going to go with. Decision, how the buyer made the decision to purchase. And this is really important, even if they didn't go with your company, because it's really important to know why they didn't go with company. And then wrap up, thank them, and that kind of stuff. So this can be very short, informal conversation, or it can be done in a quick survey. It doesn't have to be too intense, especially at the early stages.
And the next process to this matrix, if you will, is to list your competitors. And this involves going back to your secondary market research and expand what you would consider to be a competitor. Our example is that if you have a health product, a health and wellness magazine might compete with you even though they don't have a comparable product. Again, this goes back to defining the specific problem or need of your customers and how you can deliver it better than your competitors. It's also important to view your competitors in terms of other actors that engage your audience, and knowing your competitors is ultimately how you find your competitive advantage and how you can share with potential investors, stakeholders, your clients, why it's the best choice to go with you than the others. As we said, this goes into finding your competitive advantage. This is really critical to fill the unfilled gap in the market. This can involve searching different things from cost leadership, differentiation, strategic alliances, your quality, your brand, service, and social impact. We say that this is very, very critical because while some businesses might choose to specify or dive deeper into a few of these areas, we recommend you dive deep into all of them, because these are all very valid questions that potential judges at a pitch competition could ask you or just want to know. Because ultimately, when you're introducing your idea in your business, if it is to an investor who's heard many pitches from many businesses before, they might and probably do already know of a business who's doing something similar to you, and they're already comparing you to them as you speak. So diving deep into all of these, being prepared for questions, and being prepared to explain why your business stands out from the rest is a very, very critical step in this process.
Great. So if you don't really know where to get started with your competitive analysis, the SWOT analysis is a great tool, especially at the early stages of this. You can use it for literally everything, but we're going to walk you through how to use it specifically for finding your competitive analysis or the value proposition. So SWOT stands for strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. And it's a really good way to analyze your business in the larger context of your market segment. And it's used to shape your brand strategies directly. So this is usually a good first step when you're creating a marketing plan as well. If we go to the next slide. Perfect. So the strengths is what we were talking about in the previous slide, what Hope was saying. These are the things that your company really does well. What sets you apart from your competitors, those competitive advantage, those unique skill sets, unique experiences, tangible assets that your company has that other companies don't have. These are the things that you really want to highlight in your marketing. Weaknesses are areas of your business that are underdeveloped, things that your company lacks. The most common one that we've encountered in the startup sphere is things that your competitors do better than you. And that could just be because they've been around better than you. Resource limitations to production or to expanding your reach, and unclear or ununique selling propositions. So you're doing what another company does exactly the same way, but not as well. Opportunities. This is the part that kind of shapes that business growth in that forward trajectory. So this is underserved markets for specific products. So this is where we really honed in at Civic Connect. We have essentially no competitors in the Niagara region doing what we do. So that really drove our business development, and we'll show you our competitive analysis in a few slides. Only a few competitors in your area, an emerging need for a product or service, and then positive press coverage of your company, Other opportunities could include being aligned with a specific research project or another strategic stakeholder. For many startups, including some at Spark, COVID-19 was actually a huge opportunity. Obviously, it was a very sad and horrible thing to have to go through, but there was market needs that were brought to the forefront. And then threats. So this is a bit different than weaknesses. These are kind of more dynamic things that you'll have to adjust your business practices around. And a lot of these threats are outside of your control, unlike the weaknesses, which are usually in your control. So threats, the biggest one is emerging competitors, other startups, other emerging actors, changing regulatory environment, especially if you're coming up with unique IP, tech-based products, things like that, negative press or media coverage, and changing customer attitudes towards your company. So those are things that are outside of your control that most companies will have to grapple with. And the emerging threats are really, really important. That's why part of the reason why it's so important to continually do the market research, because the threats facing your company 2 years after launch are totally different than the environment a few weeks before you launched. So constantly doing that market research and that threat analysis is really vital to make sure you're aware of the climate around your company. Perfect. So you've kind of done your competitive analysis, you know your competitive advantage, you've done the SWOT analysis, and you know the names of your competitors. Now we use the competitive analysis matrix tool to put that in a nice little chart and analyze where your company stands in the market segment. So it compares brands or companies or even products that are part of a larger company that are similar to your products. And it compares the characteristics and, good selling points of each company or each product in the sector. These are almost always used in pitch decks, pitches to investors, applications for things like an accelerator program, pitches to investors, things like that. But they're also often used, I'm sure everybody's seen something like this, on a website where a person is trying to explain how their company is better, or sometimes in presentations to prospective customers. It also shows trends in your market segment and illustrates how your company stands out and adds more value and more of that unique value proposition. So this is what it looks like. Obviously, this is empty, but as you can see on the one axis, there's a list of the competitors, and up top, there's the list of the traits or attributes of each one. So this is how you set it up, and then ideally, yours should check all the boxes, which proves visually that you do the most and have the most value compared to your competitors. If you're doing this for your own internal purposes, you should be really, really harsh and really candid about the traits and attributes of your competitors, so you're fully aware and knowledgeable of the competitors. But if you're doing it for a pitch competition or for an investor proposal, you could tailor a little bit which traits and attributes you choose, so to sell your company as really standing out more than the others in those presentations. So it depends on the use of the tool, but visually it looks the same regardless. It's also a great thing to have on your website and use in your brand strategy. So at Civic Connect, we had to do this gigantic pitch competition, which is the first time we did anything like that. And we had to do lots of market research. And we can both tell you that we didn't prioritize the market research at first. We were very focused on iterating the idea. And it was actually the first question we got asked by the judges from large corporations was, what research do you have to back up? So luckily we were able to show them our research, obviously, but we did, for the youth side of things, we did a lot of secondary research. So we read a lot of census data, a lot of labor force survey data, Niagara Region economic development data released by post-secondary institutions about what it's like to be a young person in Niagara and what those challenges are and how we can fit in. So it was a lot of crunching the numbers. We also found that there was a lot of data missing in the area of youth because sometimes that age group can fall through the gaps of data reporting. And then on the business side of things, for our business services, we did a lot more primary research, and everybody at Spark has been super helpful with that as well. So we've had a lot of very honest conversations with business owners about their challenges. And we learned a lot that business owners have difficulty recruiting youth and retaining youth. on their teams, and that they oftentimes have difficulty connecting with youth audiences on social media and things like that. So through that primary research and that secondary research and that competitive analysis, we were really able to shape our business model into something totally different than what we thought it would be originally. So that was pretty cool. Hope, did I miss anything about our process?
No, I think you really nailed them all in the head there. And throughout this, another thing I'll say is it's very clear when the market research is not there. And what we saw in our pitch competition when in the first round, and we had about 10 or 15 others on the stage, it was very hard to see some just crumble under the question of where is your research, who are your competitors, and to see they did not really have a strong answer to that. So I'd say while this process is very long, it can be very tedious. It's, I'd say, one of the most important aspects to developing a very good idea.
Perfect. So we actually pulled this slide directly from the pitch deck we used in our pitch this past spring to show you what our competitive analysis matrix looked like. So like I mentioned earlier, we don't really have any competitors at all in the Niagara region. The two that we have, the Youth Opportunities Limited and Youth Employment Services, are both government agencies. And most of them are located in Toronto. So we looked at them, looked what they did. The big selling point there was that they're not run by youth. So that was one thing we highlighted as our competitive analysis. Then we expanded our reach even further. So Juve Consulting is actually based in New York, and similar to us, they're the only ones that do what they do. They're a digital marketing and media agency run entirely by youth, even a bit younger than us, by Gen Z. So that's pretty cool. And then the Youth Cafe, which offers similar youth programs, is actually based in Africa. And it's modeled after the Sustainable Development Goals, which is what we tried to do as well. So we actually took inspiration from a lot of the stuff they did. And then Ripen is based in Toronto. And this is a little bit similar to what we do, but it's a little bit different. They're affiliated with post-secondary institutions, and they connect students in those institutions to project-based experiential learning. So a bit similar, but a bit different. And then City Studios in Vancouver as well had some similar aspects. But as you can see, we designed this slide so that visually, when you look at it, you can see that Civic Connect hits all the boxes that none of the others do, and that we cast a very wide net. What we learned as well from the process of doing this and doing the pitch competition was that you can also learn a lot from your competitors, and that they can oftentimes become collaborators. So we started off having a pretty negative view, and we were kind of like hoping that there wouldn't be competitors. We were like, we want to be the only ones that do this. But if we're the only ones that do this, it really shows that there isn't that much of a need. So it was very reassuring to see that there are other companies and organizations doing what we do in a slightly different way. We do it differently, but that there is a need, and that we can take specific initiatives or projects or even things that they do and incorporate that into ours as well. We hope to, work with some of these people in the future. Collaboration, especially in the nonprofit realm, which is what we're in, can be a little bit different. But yeah, so this was our slide from the pitch deck, and you could even limit the number of competitors. We just put too many on there, but
Better to have more than less, for sure. Awesome. So another key part of translating, bringing this all together, is to translate your market research into a marketing strategy. So now that you have your buyer persona and you know who you're targeting, you know who your competitors are, you'll find that developing the social media and marketing strategies comes a lot easier. And when you have this data, you're able to set up targeted audiences for paid ads to make sure that either your Instagram post or your Facebook post gets in front of, say, like 1,000 people in your audience. For us, that could be like 1,000 youth based in Ontario or Niagara, age 18 to 30. And then using this research, you're able to dive deeper into which platforms work best for you, which ones your audience is most responsive to as well. And then you're able to draw data from those sources to see how your posts and strategies are working, who's engaging, who isn't, and what you need to do differently than your competitors who are also competing for that attention from the same consumers.
Yeah, so it's really cool if you could just go back to the other slide. I'll just add one more thing.
Oh, sorry. It's going back and forth.
Yes, when you're setting up a paid ad on a social media platform, you can actually create your own audiences. The algorithms for the platforms do it pretty well to begin with, but you can tailor it even more. So you can even add keywords or interests or other similar pages in a certain field that a person might like. So you can really, really make sure that the ad is hitting your buyer persona and those real people that fit that persona, instead of just going by age and location. Because a lot of times that's too broad and people see the big number that the ad is reaching a lot of people, but they're not necessarily those people in the buyer persona. So the results isn't the same, because reach is not always the same as actual tangible results. And it's a very reciprocal relationship between, it's very circular between using social media and web analytics and market research. So you'll use those social media and web analytics to figure out what the current market is and what consumers are interested in and what they're searching and what their preferences are. And then you'll kind of use that to tailor the ads to them. And then you'll keep reassessing the analytics on your ads and tailoring. So it's a constant process of doing that market research, creating that targeted persona in the ads, and then reassessing and reevaluating continually.
So now going into common mistakes to avoid. If you haven't grasped from this presentation, the biggest mistake is to not do any market research. I'd say when we're hearing ideas at Spark or just at in our world at Civic Connect, it's very easy to tell right away when someone hasn't done thorough research into their idea, their consumer, or the opportunity that lies ahead from them. And in that spot, as either a consultant or an advisor, it's tricky to move forward, because you almost need to go back to the drawing board and compile that research to show why your business has the opportunity to thrive in the way you want it to. Another key aspect of this is to make sure your data sources are very credible. It will show, as we've seen in pitch competitions, you might have seen as well, if the sources are not backed up by credible sources or government data, if they're from biased focus groups or even blogs, for example, which we've seen, it will show through, and it really it unfortunately causes to lose some credibility when you're sharing your story. And in saying this, it's also important to continuously update your market research and to bring in new data as it comes. When we were presenting for Civic Connect and we got that first question of the judge is, where'd you get those stats? We did show that we pulled them from Canadian Census and labor market research. However, we did have to say that these statistics were from 2018, which was the last time that the government did a survey like this. Some census surveys are done through even longer periods of time, and you might only be able to find research from 2016. But as long as you disclose that and show that you've done other research to make up for that time difference, you're able to make a very strong case in sharing with a stakeholder or investor. So in saying this, making sure your market research is complete and thorough is very critical. And when you're doing your own primary research, it's very important to make sure that you pull from a large group of diverse people. Because if you do a survey or focus group and you're so excited to share these results and what you found and why your business helps these people, the first thing someone might ask is like, where'd you do the research? Who were the people? What was their genders? What was their socioeconomic background like? And if, unfortunately, you can say there was a few people and they're all relatively the same, the data is not very usable. So I think the bottom line from all of this is to do the market research, do it thoroughly, and consider numerous factors in making your business case.
Perfect. So if you're a member company at Spark, you will have access to discounted pricing, extended free trials, and stuff like that on all of these resources that are really useful in market research and creating that marketing strategy. And even if you're not, these are still useful companies. So just a little plug there. HubSpot is a great starting point for market research. It's a very comprehensive CRM that keeps track of all sorts of customer data, as well as a million other features. And we have the startup package for HubSpot. Lucky Orange Web Analytics does advanced analytics of the visitors of your website, what they clicked on, if they made a purchase, how long it took them to make a purchase. If they didn't, what was the last page they saw before they left? Things like that that can really shape how you optimize your website, as well as so you can see who is even searching out your website and clicking it. Email analytics tools such as Constant Contact and Reply.io. These analyze the demographics of the people opening your emails, what works effectively with specific groups of people, things like that. And then we have social media analytics, like I was talking about a few slides back, about running targeted ads and things like that, seeing who's visiting your profile, seeing who visits similar profiles, that kind of stuff. Agora, Pulse, and Social Bee offer discounted pricing. They also have all sorts of other social media management tools built into the platforms. And then the next slide should answer Art's question. So this is the best possible starting point for any market research, and it's totally free. Doodle Trends, it analyzes trends of specific keywords. So you type in a keyword that's related to your business. So for example, we could put in something like youth employment or youth civic engagement, or something like anything in that area. It will analyze trends of those keywords. It will show the regions, languages, the cities, and other relevant demographic data to show who is searching for those keywords. So you can really easily and clearly see who is searching for things in that market segment. And then you can get more specific and search your company name and things like that. So this is, before you even get too far into it, this is a really good example to see what the market is. If there's a lot of searches for that product or service, then you know that you're in a good market. If there's not, then you might need to tailor the messaging in your company and stuff like that. So yeah, just Doodle Trends is amazing.
A great example that we saw from a client we met with who was using Google Trends. He started a storybook about the tooth fairy. And his big value proposition is, he said, the word tooth fairy is the second or third most searched word in the world. Said across every region in the world, because there isn't a religious or major cultural attachment to it. They said it's searched all year round. It's searched by like a diverse range of age categories as well. So this tool is very helpful in helping him make the case to investors and stakeholders of why his idea was really unique and will be able to reach a major audience.
Yeah, for sure. And just to address Art C's question in the chat, I don't personally know of anything cheaper than that. I think all of those competitors are relatively similar, where you pay a subscription or a fee, and then they will, create a focus group for you. A lot of that data, my recommendation, which is also based on what we did as well, is try to, if you want to cut corners and save money financially on that way, is just to try and do it yourself. And then if not, you can also just do it online and run a very cheap social media ad, which would be much more inexpensive to get the survey filled out and things like that, with some kind of incentive, like I mentioned. But I will definitely look into that and get back to you. I don't know if there's anything cheaper or anything specific to startups, unfortunately. That's a great question. I'll look into that.
Awesome.
So thank you so much for listening to our webinar. If you'd like to get in contact with Spark or with us for Civic Connect, here's the contact info for both of those companies. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you for listening. This is a really great opportunity.
Well, thank you both so much. This has been very, very enlightening and very educational. I got to say, I love how you guys took what you've learned and you've been able to apply it and actually make it come to life for everybody here. So now is an opportunity for our viewers to ask a question. Now I see that Art did ask, and we've addressed that question. Are there any other questions from anybody? You can write in the chat if you'd like, and then we'll be happy to address that question. Okay, well, while people are thinking about that, so market research just still feels very daunting as a thing. So how long did it actually take you guys to get a complete market research done to be able to do your pitch deck?
We'd say this was a bit of an ongoing project, as our mentor tasked us with it, and we did a job, and he saw it and he said, this isn't good enough, do more. So this incubation program was, I believe, 11 weeks. I'd say we committed about 2 or 3 weeks on a very part-time basis to get this done. If you have the time to spend more than, say, maybe like 5 or 10 hours a week like we did, you might be able to get it done faster. We'd suggest that following a either timeline or framework will really help you follow the right steps in getting it done, rather than picking apart little pieces here and there.
Yeah, we also had to readjust a lot of our market research as a result of COVID-19. So at the start of that, the whole, experience of being a young person existing in the world changed so radically like that. So we had to redo a lot of what we had done earlier to see what the new emerging climate and what the most pressing problems and challenges were for youth in the region during COVID, and then use that to kind of tailor our programming. So April was very, very stressful.
Okay, well, we've received a question from Matya. How thorough would you say your market research is in terms of targeting a specific demographic? And had you seen major growth with website traffic and interest after having paid for ads on social media platforms? So it's a two-tiered question.
I'll let Kayleen take that one. I think she might know a bit more about it. I'll chime in too.
So for the first part, it really depends on your company and the product and service. We have multiple different target demographics. Like Hope was saying, we have, for example, one of our target demographics is a high school student, and we have a whole persona for that and what their experience and their challenges are. Then we have one for a university student, and then we have one for a recent grad and a millennial. And then conversely, we have a target audience and a buyer persona for our business services. So typically, a small business owner, somebody starting a nonprofit, they'll have a totally different buyer persona. So pretty thorough. As I mentioned, we had to redo a lot of it as a result of COVID-19. And especially for youth, there's a lot of data missing. And even in the small business sphere, there's a lot of data missing. But we're definitely in the process of making it more thorough, but we have a lot of different buyer personas. And like you said on the slide, for each different product or service, you'll also probably have a different buyer persona as well, depending on what your company offers. But as well, when you're starting out, it's okay to not have a super defined buyer persona. When we started out, we were just kind of lumping all youth together and just kind of throwing things at a wall and seeing what stuck. And it depends on the company and the stage of your company's growth. Paid ads can be really effective depending on how you do them, or not effective at all. There's a lot of tips and tricks. Nicole's laughing because we just went through this whole process at Spark with running different paid ads and seeing what's working. So a big thing that really helps the website traffic is making sure that you're not just focusing on the number of the reach, because if you go to set up an Instagram ad or a Facebook ad or whatever, it'll give you like the reach of what the ad is. But again, those people aren't necessarily interested in your service or your product or your company. They might not necessarily be interested enough to click. So even if it means having a lower reach, really making those target audiences, you can go in, we did even do a tutorial, or I'm sure there is on YouTube already. You can go in and make your own audiences and type in keywords, key locations, narrow down that age bracket as much as possible, things like that. You can put tons and tons of interest, hobbies, keywords into it, and that will really increase the click rate on your website, because the people that you're seeing, even if it's way less people, they're actually going to be much more interested. Again, ads, it really depends how you use it. A lot of people think that they're just a catch-all. We'll put it out there and there'll be huge results. Not necessarily. There really is quite a science, and it really depends what you're marketing as well. A lot of times the ads aren't even necessarily directed to a website. They're directed to a profile, or to, not necessarily like a specific page on the company's website, like a discount page if they have a landing page or something like that, or an application form. directed to the home page of the website. So then from there, you need to look at if people actually clicked onto the home page and what they did on the website. Doodle analytics, you can also put right into your website so you can see who's clicking on it. And the analytics for the paid ads as well is really, really good. You can see, even just the analytics without paid ads is really good. You can see who's clicking on your website. So checking that regularly. It really depends just how you use it and what you're marketing. But yeah, we could definitely do like a blog post or something on paid ads, tips and tricks or stuff like that. But thank you so much for that question.
Yeah, that was actually a great question. And yes, I was thinking as I was listening, there's a potential for another webinar in the future, just on that alone. So are there any other questions from our viewing audience before we wrap things up? It doesn't seem like there is. So thank you, Hope and Kayleen.